Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real United States. I'm your host Paul Campbell, and behind the camera as always is our camera operator and my wife Beverly Campbell. We are here in Paris, Michigan at the Paris Fish Hatchery. Now Paris is a small town. It's probably less than 1,000 people. Very small rural community here in west central Michigan. But they happen to have here a fish hatchery. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, fish hatcheries are either governmental or sometimes privately owned commercial facilities that have these large concrete ponds, usually several of them, where fish eggs are fertilized and brought to where they hatch, and then the fry are raised until they are such a size that they can then be stocked into ponds, lakes, rivers. Now, in terms of government-owned fish hatcheries, the young fish are usually stocked into public lakes and rivers, ponds, where they can grow. They can, of course, help add to the environment, and they can be a source for sport fishermen and even commercial fishermen. Privately owned fish hatcheries usually raise the fish to adulthood, where they're then harvested and sold in the open market for food. So the Paris Fish Hatchery actually has been here for a very, very long time. It was built here in 1881, just shortly after the American Civil War. And for a long time was in fact an operating fish hatchery, and then later was closed for many years, and then was purchased by Mecosta County. This is the county where Paris is located, and included into the Paris Park. There's a big park here. We're close to the Muskegon River. There's a camping facility here, very, very active during the warmer months. It's pretty well empty now because it's late October. And so the fish that are raised here are just raised here. This is part of the park where people can come and see the fish and enjoy them. And they're not really raised for stocking ponds, to the best of my knowledge. This is just part of the park. So we're gonna zoom in here a little bit. Bev's gonna come up and we're gonna show you that right behind me, it's a rather shallow pond. It's all made out of concrete. And you can see some plants growing down in the bottom of this, if you can see that. I'm pretty sure that this particular plant, for those of you that are really interested, is a little aquatic plant called the Elodea canadensis, which helps to keep the water aerated. As these plants photosynthesize and release oxygen, it bubbles up through the water and helps keep the oxygen levels in the water. Now you can see some of the fish here. These are in fact rainbow trout. We'll move down a little bit, see if we can get closer to them without spooking them. Rainbow trout, highly prized as sport fish, also very delicious eating fish. And you see there are a couple of dozen here gathered around. Now people come during the warmer months, and there's normally a little machine here that has fish food in it. You put a coin in it and you get a handful of fish food, and the kids can feed the fish. So the fish are used to being around when there's a human standing here because it's their source of food. These fish are probably running from between 10 and 14 inches long. And they seem to be very healthy, well cared for, obviously. And you can see that this pond is probably no more than about, it's hard to say with the growth on the bottom, but it's probably no more than about 3 feet of water in here. Trout obviously like a lot of oxygen in the water, very highly oxygenated water, and that tends to be water that's colder water. You can see also that we have a spillway here, and this is all tied into the local watershed. As water comes in here and it goes through, they utilize the water from the local watershed, and it passes out through this spillway then into the Muskegon River as part of the drainage basin of Mecosta County. And we can swing around to the left here, and we can show you that this is the original building that was built here in the 1880s as part of the fish hatchery. This is where the operations of the fish hatchery were conducted. Today it's little more than a gathering place for people. There may be a few historical artifacts in there, but the original building has been well maintained. Looks like the roof needs a little bit of help, a couple of shingles missing, but that's to be expected. Now, we've shown you in past episodes that these historical places often have this large cast iron placard, this big sign of designating it as a state historic site, and this place is no exception. So we're going to walk over and we're going to show you that placard right now that has all the information about it. Now, this is the large cast iron historic marker that I was talking about. It has all the information about the hatchery's history. Interesting thing that the hatchery was reopened here as part of the park in 1976, which was in fact the year of the bicentennial in the United States, our 200th anniversary of independence as a nation. So sort of a befitting historical period for this to reopen as a park. Now, the Paris Fish Hatchery is a relatively small facility, largely because of the era that it was built in. More modern day fish hatcheries are huge, huge outfits, sometimes with a combination of concrete ponds and big steel tubs, for lack of a better term, big steel vessels that fish are hatched and raised in and moved from vessel to vessel in order to take them through their developmental stages. But there is more to it than just this one pond. Now we're going to swing here just a little bit, Bev, and you see here this sign that says, "Welcome trout ponds, bird ponds over the tracks." Well, there aren't actually any tracks here. There were railroad tracks here at one time. This railroad line ran on top of this berm. Now, this berm, I doubt you recognize, but we actually have done a previous episode about this last winter. This is, in fact, the White Pine State Park Trail, or the White Pine Trail State Park, I guess is what it actually is, that is now paved and used for equestrian traffic in the warmer months. It's used for snowmobile trail in the cooler months, and is like over 100 miles long. And we did do an episode about the snowmobiling on this last winter. Well, over this berm on the other side, and we're going to go up there and we're going to show it to you, is another larger pond. Now, it's closed off for the season. It's fenced off and gated up and everything, so they don't have people trout fishing in the park during the off season. But there is more to this facility than actually what is right here next to the building. So we're going to go up over the top and we're going to show you the trout pond on the other side. So now we're standing up on top of this large berm where the White Pine Trail State Park is. And you can see down here on the other side of the berm, bottom of the hill, is another somewhat larger trout pond, part of the hatchery where they raise trout and salmon mostly. But because this has become part of a park, you'll notice that in more recent years, since '76, they've installed this pavilion with picnic tables, which are now stacked up because it's late in the year. But in the warmer months, these are all set down and people can come down here. You notice the nicely groomed yard up behind the pavilion, and people can come and they can have a picnic here and sit and enjoy the fish and just have a nice peaceful time. And you'll maybe can see way off in the distance behind the pond as part of the spillway, that body of water that we see just a little bit of there is the Muskegon River that runs down all through this part of the country, down through Big Rapids where we live. You notice there are some rapids down there. Now supposedly, since this is the city of Paris, there is a scale model, I guess you'd call it, of the Eiffel Tower here that someone has built somewhere along the way. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to see the Eiffel Tower, but we'll take a walk down there and see if we can find it. Now, as I said earlier, because this is a park, it's where people come and bring their families, you'll notice this white bag, sort of square box-like thing on the post. This is where they keep the little machine that you put a coin in to get fish food. Now, obviously, being this late in the year, this has been closed up. People aren't really coming to the park in late October because we're up above the 43rd parallel and it's starting to get quite cool. It's a nice day today, but the park is pretty well shut down for the season. But this is where they have, on both ponds, they have these machines for getting fish food so the kids can get a little handful of fish food and have the fish come up and eat, and it's a lot of fun for them. Now, I had pointed out earlier that off in the distance from where we were standing up by the main building of the hatchery was the Muskegon River. Well, down here right next to the river are the last two large and connected ponds, made of concrete ponds here, that are part of the fish hatchery that was built in 1881. And you can see they're still in fairly good repair after all this time. And down here in these, you'll see there are also quite a number of wild ducks living. Now, these ducks are being fed by the park and in fact housed. So they're pretty well permanent residents, even though they are free to come and go as they like. And they help keep the ponds clean from debris, I suppose, just by the process of going through and eating the way ducks do. It's a very lovely setting. Now, I had mentioned that this is in Paris, Michigan. Well, no trip to Paris would be complete without a visit to the Eiffel Tower. Now, the area where the Eiffel Tower is in this particular case is gated off, so we can't get up close to it. But I think we can pull in a pretty good zoom on it and show you that there is in fact a 20-foot tall, 8-foot square at the base representation or model of Gustave Eiffel's famous tower in Paris. And it's situated on a nice little hill up behind me. There are park benches there, you see, as well, that have been stacked for the winter, but during the summer months you can actually come and picnic at the base of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So it's a beautiful little representation, and I suppose for those that live in this town, it was something they felt compelled to do because of their namesake city. Beautiful fall day here in west central Michigan for being this late in the year. Usually by this time of the year we've got snow on the ground, but this year we're kind of fortunate. It hasn't snowed on us yet. Unlike last year, which was perhaps the worst winter we'd had in about 30 years, this year has been quite mild. So I'd like to thank you for joining us here on The Real United States. We hope you've enjoyed this small episode on the Paris Fish Hatchery here in Mecosta County in Paris, Michigan. We hope you'll subscribe and join us if you haven't already for future episodes. Come along for the adventure. If you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. I love hearing from all of you. I try to get back to everyone as soon as I possibly can. And as always, thank you for watching.